Imagine a world where the promise of immense, effortless wealth glitters just beyond your grasp. A world where financial miracles aren't just possible, but are happening right now, for everyone else. All you need to do is invest. Hand over your life savings, your retirement, your children's college fund, and watch it multiply at rates unheard of, rates that defy every economic principle you've ever learned. The catch? There is no catch, or so you're told by a charismatic figure, radiating confidence and success. This isn't some distant fantasy, it's a chillingly familiar pattern, a blueprint for betrayal that has echoed through the ages, leaving a trail of shattered dreams and financial ruin. And its architect, the man who perfected this art of illusion, was an Italian immigrant named Charles Ponzi, whose name became synonymous with the most devastating financial deception in history. Born Carlo Pietro Giovanni Guglielmo Tebaldo Ponzi in Parma, Italy, in 1882, he was a man of grand ambitions but little initial success. He arrived in Boston in 1903 with a mere $2.50 to his name, having gambled away the rest of his savings on the voyage. Ponzi often boasted, quite inaccurately, of coming from a wealthy family, a detail that foreshadowed his later inclination towards fabricating an impressive facade. His early years in America were a string of failed ventures, menial jobs, and brushes with the law. He worked as a dishwasher, a factory worker, and even spent time in Canadian prison for check fraud, followed by a stint in an American prison for smuggling Italian immigrants across the border. These experiences, rather than deterring him, seemed to sharpen his cunning, teaching him valuable lessons about human nature and the art of manipulation. It was in 1919, while working in Boston, that Ponzi stumbled upon what he believed was his ticket to legitimate wealth: international reply coupons, or IRCs. These coupons, issued by the Universal Postal Union, allowed someone in one country to buy a coupon and mail it to a recipient in another country, who could then exchange it for postage stamps equal to the cost of an airmail letter. The brilliance, or so Ponzi claimed, lay in the fluctuating exchange rates following World War I. He argued that IRCs could be purchased cheaply in war-torn Europe, where currencies were devalued, and then redeemed for a higher value in the United States, where the dollar was strong. This arbitrage, he promised, offered an astronomical return on investment. Ponzi moved quickly, establishing the Securities Exchange Company. He wasn't subtle, he promised investors an astonishing 50% return in just 45 days, or even double their money in 90 days. To put that into perspective, banks at the time were offering around 5% annually. His claims were outlandish, bordering on unbelievable, yet people flocked to him. Why? Because the initial investors paid. Ponzi simply used money from new investors to pay off the old ones, creating an illusion of incredible profitability. Word spread like wildfire. Immigrants, particularly Italian Americans who trusted this charismatic figure who spoke their language, mortgaged their homes, pulled their life savings, and poured money into Ponzi's scheme. His office, once a small room, expanded rapidly, handling hundreds of thousands of dollars daily. Ponzi became a celebrated figure, a man who had cracked the code to instant wealth, transforming ordinary people into millionaires. He bought a lavish mansion, drove expensive cars, and lived a life of opulence, all designed to reinforce the image of an unstoppable financial genius. But even as Ponzi's empire grew, cracks began to show beneath the polished facade. Skepticism simmered. Financial analysts and journalists started to question the astonishing returns and the logistical impossibility of his purported IRC operation. For Ponzi's scheme to be legitimate, he would have had to purchase and redeem billions of IRCs, far more than were even in circulation globally. Yet, Ponzi masterfully deflected criticism, often pointing to his continued ability to pay investors as proof of his genius. He cultivated an air of defiant transparency, even allowing some limited audits, which, of course, were cleverly obfuscated. The critical turning point came in July 1920, when the Boston Post, a newspaper that had initially lauded Ponzi, began to publish a series of articles questioning his business practices. Simultaneously, the state bank commissioner, concerned by the sheer volume of money flowing into Ponzi's company, ordered him to stop taking deposits. Panic ensued. Thousands of investors, fearing their money was lost, descended upon Ponzi's office, demanding their cash back. This was the moment any legitimate business would collapse. But Ponzi, ever the showman, pulled off his most audacious gamble yet. For an entire week, he sat at his desk, personally paying out every investor who demanded their money, often with a theatrical flourish, flashing wads of cash. He had temporarily secured a bank loan to cover the withdrawals, leveraging a brief hiatus in the official scrutiny. This move wasn't a sign of solvency, it was a masterful psychological operation. By paying out those who ran, he created an even stronger sense of trust among the remaining investors. They saw him as a man of his word, a financial titan who could weather any storm. The run subsided, and incredibly, many of those who had withdrawn their money reinvested it, bringing even more with them. Ponzi had not only survived, he had emerged stronger, seemingly untouchable. His triumph, however, was short-lived. The Boston Post remained relentless, assigning investigative journalist Clarence Barron to dig deeper. Barron, alongside a diligent auditor named Joseph R. Fraser, meticulously examined Ponzi's books and uncovered the devastating truth: there were no IRC purchases of any significant scale. Ponzi was not buying and selling coupons, he was simply shuffling money from one pocket to another. His entire operation was a pyramid of debt, sustained only by the constant influx of new money. The Securities Exchange Company was found to be hopelessly insolvent, with liabilities far outweighing its meager assets. On August 10, 1920, the truth exploded. The Boston Post published Fraser's report, definitively declaring Ponzi a fraud. Simultaneously, state and federal authorities moved in, shutting down his company and seizing its assets. The illusion shattered with brutal force. The man who had promised untold riches was revealed as a cunning swindler. The devastating fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Thousands of ordinary people, many of whom had invested their entire life savings, lost everything. Banks that had lent money to Ponzi or whose clients had withdrawn funds to invest with him faced collapse. Businesses failed, families were ruined, and suicides were reported among the most desperate victims. It's estimated that Ponzi had taken in over $15 million in 1920 alone, an astronomical sum for the era, equivalent to hundreds of millions today. His victims numbered in the tens of thousands. Ponzi was arrested, charged with multiple counts of mail fraud and state charges. He spent years in prison, both federally and in Massachusetts. After his release, unrepentant and ever the hustler, he continued to engage in various real estate and land scams in Florida, even attempting to impersonate a government official. He was eventually deported to Italy in 1934. He lived out his remaining years in relative obscurity in Brazil, working occasionally as an agent for an Italian airline, and eventually died impoverished in 1949, reportedly blind and partially paralyzed, still maintaining that his scheme could have worked if only he hadn't been interfered with. Charles Ponzi's name, of course, became immortalized, forever associated with the type of investment fraud he perfected, the Ponzi scheme. His story serves as a stark, timeless lesson in the dangers of unbridled greed and unquestioning trust. The core mechanics of his fraud, paying early investors with money from later investors, continue to manifest in various forms today, from elaborate Wall Street cons like Bernie Madoff's multi-billion-dollar deception to modern-day cryptocurrency scams that promise impossible returns. Why do these schemes persist? Because human nature remains constant. We are susceptible to the allure of easy money, the fear of missing out, and the persuasive power of a charismatic individual promising shortcuts to wealth. Ponzi taught us that skepticism is not cynicism, but a vital defense. If an investment promises returns that are dramatically higher than market averages, if it lacks transparency or a clear, understandable business model, and if it relies solely on the recruitment of new investors, then alarm bells should be deafening. The legacy of Charles Ponzi isn't just a tale of financial crime, it's a profound warning etched into the very fabric of our financial consciousness. If it sounds too good to be true, it almost certainly is. The price of ignoring that simple truth can be utterly devastating. What are your thoughts on Ponzi's audacious scheme? Have you or anyone you know ever encountered a modern-day version? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you found this journey into one of history's greatest financial betrayals insightful, please remember to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most incredible cons, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching.